Spock Amok is the fifth episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds and takes things in a light-hearted direction, with a comedic outing this time, primarily focusing on Spock, but with side stories for La'an and Una, Nurse Chapel, and Pike and an alien race called the Rongovian Protectorate. The episode begins with a pretty cool opening actually. Spock is back on Vulcan during what is supposed to be his wedding ceremony to his wife T'Pring. She remarks, startled, that his physical appearance has changed. He is human suddenly, and his ears are normal, just like a human's. Spock certainly appears to be human in this scene, and he's forced to fight himself. His Vulcan self. So it's human Spock versus Vulcan Spock. An interesting take on the scene from the original series episode Amok Time, and there's a really nice touch with a throwback to the music from that episode. Of course, this is a dream, and Spock awakens in a cold sweat before giving us his personal log. T'Pring is indeed coming aboard the Enterprise, which is docked for repairs after the major incident in the previous episode with the Gorn. Spock and T'Pring's main story centers on how their careers impact upon their ability to maintain a relationship together, and how they struggle with the burden of duty and their own respective responsibilities. Meantime, Admiral April and Captain Pike are in the process of opening diplomatic discussions with the Rongovian Protectorate, who would make for invaluable allies given the strategic importance of where they're based near the Beta Quadrant. The Rongovians are not a race that the Federation want to lose to the likes of the Romulans or the Klingons. Initial negotiations did not go well when the Tellarites gave it a go. Now, it's the humans' turn. Spock and T'Pring decide to try to empathize with each other a little more directly with a Vulcan soul-sharing ritual designed to better understand each other. It's actually a clever idea, transferring the Vulcan Katra between bodies, but as you might imagine, this body swapping goes horribly wrong when they don't seem to be able to reverse it afterwards. Now, of course, body swapping stories are a dime a dozen in science fiction, but I like how this one was handled and how the actors subtly handled playing each other's roles. Anyway, we're going to get more into this episode right after this. Before we go very much further, it's time now for a word from our partner for this video, NordVPN, a virtual private network that will keep you secure and safe online. Your activity and personal information on the internet these days is becoming increasingly more visible to others, and for that reason, you need to take steps to protect your data and privacy. NordVPN provides you with next-generation security features that allows you to do just that. It provides advanced protection against cyber attacks, malware, and trackers, and lets you block intrusive ads so that you are in full control of your web browsing experience. In addition to that, you can protect all of your devices on a single subscription. Nord works on Mac, PC, Linux, iOS, Android, and even your Wi-Fi router. Some VPNs really slow down your connection, but not Nord. Whatever you're doing, whether it's watching videos, streaming music, doing video calls, or playing video games, Nord's 5,200 plus super fast servers and groundbreaking Nord Links protocol mean that there's no bandwidth limits to worry about, just a robust, secure, and really fast connection. And their no-logs policy means that there's no record of your web browsing history for third parties to see. You can hide your IP address with just a few clicks and have peace of mind while online, and in addition, Nord offers dedicated technical and customer support with a knowledgeable and friendly staff. Use my link in the description box and download Nord today. And if you make use of the promo code ComputingForever, you'll get 1 month for free when buying the 2-year plan. Okay, so welcome back. After initial talks with the Rongovians break down, for some reason their leader Vaso only wishes to speak to Mr. Spock. But of course, Spock is in T'Pring, no pun intended, and T'Pring is now in Spock. It makes for perfect material for awkward comedy. They can't keep this secret from Captain Pike for long, of course. The episode doesn't always succeed at landing too many funny gags. But one that did make me smile was when Spock tells Pike that now that he knows that they've swapped bodies, he can no doubt tell the difference between the two of them because of their mannerisms, to which Pike sarcastically replies, "Yeah, totally." It's actually quite a tongue-in-cheek moment, given that Vulcans can be so similar because they are devoid of emotions, and their speech and self-expression can make it hard to distinguish between them. And that's where the writing and really strong performances of Ethan Peck and Gaia Sandhu succeed in this episode. Suffice to say, T'Pring has to pass herself off as Spock to the Rongovians, and Spock has to pass himself off as T'Pring and must undertake her duty to meet with Vulcan criminal Barjan Tor, who has agreed to surrender only if he speaks to her. Both T'Pring and Spock agree to undertake each other's duties. Perhaps this will help to strengthen their relationship. Meantime, the only person that Spock can confide in about his relationship is Nurse Chapel, who he seems to have a very strong rapport with. There could be something eventually going on there, who knows. Seems to be feelings at least on her side. In the negotiations with the Rungovians, Vaso brings up an interesting point. What is the point of an alliance with the Federation when interdependence upon it would dilute the cultures within it? Something that has been historically true of all attempts at building international superstates comprised of multiple nations, which always result in the individual nation's identity being somewhat diminished and compromised. Spock, or rather T'Pring, actually agrees, saying that there are times that he or she wishes she could return to Vulcan to focus on her culture instead of traveling the galaxy focusing on Starfleet. This is clearly something that T'Pring wishes that the real Spock would appreciate. Vaso is very confused by this, so Pike has to rescue the situation by giving an impassioned speech about how it was a noble sacrifice that Spock made to spend so much time away from his own culture in service of Starfleet. It ends up impressing Vaso. Later in sickbay, Chapel and Dr. Mbenga devise a medical treatment for the Katra problem of Spock and T'Pring, and their bodies are both switched back to normal. Their story is resolved, and they both gain an insight into each other's perspective on their relationship, as well as Spock's commitment to Starfleet and his own Vulcan culture. The conclusion with the Rungovians I found most interesting. Vaso asks Pike why they should ally with the Federation, to which Pike unexpectedly replies that they shouldn't because they barely know each other or their culture. It would also turn the Federation's enemies into their enemies, and, though they would get the hypothetical benefit of new trade markets and scientific advances, and the promise of Federation support in the event of a crisis, which will probably only happen if they ally with the Federation in the first place, he says that the Rungovians have good reason to suspect that the price of allying with the Federation might be too high for them to pay. Vaso thanks Pike and leaves. Admiral April is taken aback. Pike explains he was playing a hunch. He saw how the Rungovians were rude to the Tellarites, reasonable with the humans, and logical with Spock. Uhura asks if this means they copy other people they come in contact with. Pike says that given that they respected him for standing up for Spock, it seems that what the Rungovians want is someone to take their point of view, radical empathy. Sure enough, it pays off, and the Rungovians display the Federation banner from their solar sail vessel, meaning that they take the Federation as an ally. Ultimately, this story nicely mirrors the story with Spock and T'Pring in terms of empathy and trying to better understand cultural or even personal differences. I should also mention that there's another story concerning La'an and Una, who spend the episode trying to understand a game played by the ensigns and crewmen called Enterprise Bingo, with a series of funny challenges. The hijinks they get up to are of course only possible given that most of the crew are on shore leave. There's a few nice gags in there, a turbolift game, a very low-setting phaser shootout, and a walk on the hull of the ship with a force field over their heads. And they sign what's called the Scorch, which is the oldest, unreplaced section of the Enterprise's hull, which is supposedly good luck if you sign it. The relationship talk with Chapel and Ortegas is generally uninteresting, which is why I don't want to talk about it too much. Overall, Spock Amok has some pretty clever moments in there, even though the episode drags a little bit. Chapel's scenes really don't add much to the episode at all, and could have been shaved off the runtime if they'd been removed. The episode is 51 minutes long. It might have helped the pacing if they'd been taken out, in my opinion. I'm not sold on this version of Nurse Chapel. The stock standard chick flick trope of the woman who struggles with a serious romantic relationship because of some sort of commitment issue is rather boring and overdone in Hollywood, in my opinion. The episode also nicely handles Spock's struggle and insecurities and his internal identity crisis at having been raised as a half-human and half-Vulcan on the planet Vulcan, where he always felt he was treated differently and always had to prove his Vulcanness, whereas in Starfleet he is accepted as being both human and Vulcan. On the Enterprise, he is quite simply Spock. It may not be a great episode, but it is fun and even inspiring in places, with a positive message. It's generally an upbeat, positive episode, which feels pretty Star Trek to me.